The first time that I went to New York was with my mom, and it was a long, long time ago. We were on like this Amtrak trip from Georgia to Boston, New York, Philadelphia. We did all of the states that Southerners would call the Yankee states. So we arrived at Grand Central Station and we got out of the train. That was my introduction to New York, was getting out of a train inside Grand Central Station and just being like, wow, because I was living in Athens, Georgia at the time, which had a population of like, I don't know, 30,000. I think the population of Athens, Georgia would go up to like 60,000 during the school year because that's where the University of Georgia is. So anyway, we step out of the train in Grand Central Station, and you can imagine I'm like, 9 or 10 years old or something like that, maybe 11. And I was just like, wow, look at all these people. and then and then my mom was like, okay, come on, let's go outside and we'll get a cab. So we walked outside Grand Central Station, and it was even more bananas. It was like millions of zillions of people outside. I couldn't believe it. And then we got in this cab, and we get in the back seat of this cab. And I am not lying to you. We were in the back of that cab for, I don't know, a couple of minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and we didn't make any progress. Like we were stuck in a traffic jam the second we got in the cab. So we didn't even get to the end of the block after like minutes. And it wasn't looking like it was going to get any better. So my mom paid and we got out, and then we walked like a million miles to wherever we were going because New York is so gigantic, and so then my mom took me to go to Chinatown, which was wild, and we took a tour. And I remember during the tour guides was talking about how there are more people in 1 square mile of Chinatown than, like, I don't know, at the time, most American cities or most American towns or something. It was pretty mind blowing, and I remember at the time thinking like, why do people even live here? It's just too big. It's just such a big city. I just didn't understand it. So then I never went back as a kid, and then I didn't go back as an adult until many years later when I was starting to see this woman, and she lived in New York, and I was living in Chicago. I was working for the Chicago Sun-Times as the TV critic. I was there at the same time as Roger Ebert. And so I met this woman who sort of swept me off my feet sexually and romantically. And so I was just spending a ton of time flying to New York, and she was flying to Chicago. And the Sun-Times, my employer, they, let me work at home. So they didn't even know that I was like flying to New York and staying there for like 4 weeks at a time or 6 weeks at a time. But it worked out because one time I was in New York and I was staying at my lover's tiny little apartment that cost $2,400 a month for like, I don't even know, like 350 square feet or 400 square feet or something. And so one day I got a call on my mobile phone from Good Morning America. They wanted me to come on the set like first thing in the morning, and they thought I was in Chicago, so they were going to have me do some kind of remote. But I was like, hey, I am in New York, and I can actually come to the New York set. And so they were like thrilled, and they put me in a limousine in the morning. And anyway, so I guess at that point during that relationship, New York to me was a very wild thing because, I mean, I was having a ton of sex, just an amazing amount of sex. It was really wild. It was like honeymoon amounts of sex. And then I'm on Good Morning America, and, and then plus, my lover was showing me around New York, which was the first time I ever got a glimpse of New York. And I thought, oh, there are things about it I like. It's a walking city, and you can jump on a subway, and all that stuff was really super great. And then I left the Chicago sometimes, and then I went back to Las Vegas, where I had lived and worked before, because Vegas is like home to me. And so then my lover from New York followed me to Vegas, and then that relationship didn't work out, and that was very upsetting to me, and probably to her as well. But let's just stay on track with New York. So I then several years later got into a relationship with a woman from New York who was living in Las Vegas, and then occasionally we would fly to New York and the Hamptons and all that, and we would take in New York. And those trips with her were not as good because we were staying in hotels and people's homes, and the people's homes were great. I loved that. We knew some, or she knew some billionaires, so I got to meet some billionaires and hang out with them. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but they were really great. I really loved them. They were the good billionaires. Not all billionaires are awful. So anyway, that relationship came to an end, and then I didn't go back to New York for a long, long time. And then in December, I went with yet another lover from Las Vegas who, was not from New York but had been before. And this is all video from this December trip, which was really not a good trip for a lot of reasons I'm not going to get into because I don't feel like having a big therapeutic pity party today about why why this trip sucked so bad. I will say that we had a lot of great times at the four museums, and I'll put up some videos of those museums. But here are my total thoughts about New York. One, I love that it's a walking city. You can walk anywhere and you can jump on a train and you can end up at the park. Number two, the park is incredible. I love the park. Man, if I lived in New York and I had a bunch of money, I would definitely live on the park like John Lennon did or Howard Stern or whoever. It's just like you could walk outside and you could just be like, oh man, the park is it's incredible. Number three thing that I like about New York is that I guess that's it. Those are the two things that I love about New York. Let's do the cons list. The cons list is that it's a pretty impersonal city. There's a lot of debate back and forth between people about whether it's a nice city or whether it's a mean city, depending on your viewpoint and what kind of person you are, and if you're there long enough. But here's the thing. I've known a lot of people in New York and from New York, and I still have friends from New York that have left New York and don't live there anymore. And I think that when you're in New York, it's just, everything. I think if you're a person there, I don't mean to disparage the people of New York, but I guess my experience is that a lot of people see other people as disposable because you've got like millions and millions of people. So if it's like that Seinfeld episode where he would just break up with a woman because she had big hands or something. It's like you just dispose of people in New York. It just disposing. And I think like the dating app culture across America is similar to that now. So if you've ever been on a dating app and you've got like 500 people that like you and you're trying to figure out, who you're going to keep and get rid of, I think New York is very similar to that on a big mass level, face to face all the time. So I don't like that. I don't like the fact that all the you're walk. I always feel like I'm in a high school in New York. Like if you're in a high school, you're walking down the hallways and you're just like locker, 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 locker. And then when you're in New York, you're walking down the street and you're just like, instead of lockers, it's restaurant, bar, shoes, restaurant, bar, shoes, restaurant, bar, clothes, restaurant, bar, shoe repair. It's just the same thing. Let's see. Another thing I don't like about New York, I don't know. I actually don't mind the dirtiness. I don't think it's as dirty as people might think. Like if you're from Oklahoma or something, you probably think that New York is like super dirty. And I've not had that experience. I know that people have a lot of New Yorkers have these experiences like, oh, I walked over like a dead body or something, but I never had anything like that. Anyway, so that's my experience of New York. A lot of people love it. A lot of people hate it. I'm kind of ambivalent about it. And I'm always glad to come home to Las Vegas, and I just can't wait for that plane to arrive and see my city. That's it. I love you very much. I hope you're having a great day and enjoy New York if you go.